in a positive light. And what about the earliest Christians? What do we know about them from history, apart from the New Testament?
The characters described in the New Testament are very difficult to identify as historical figures in many cases. When we come to figures who we can be sure are actually Christians in history, they appear to be, and some of the very earliest, relatives of the imperial Flavian family itself. We mentioned the granddaughter of Vespasian, Domitilla. Her burial site, the catacombs of St. Domitilla, are the oldest physical evidence of Christianity that exists. Her husband was actually a cousin of Titus and a great-nephew of Vespasian, and Titus Flavius Clemens was his name. Catholic tradition has assigned him as Saint Clement of Rome, who left us perhaps some of the earliest Christian literature found outside of the New Testament, the Epistle of Saint Clement of Rome. Curiously enough, he, Catholic tradition, assigns as one of the earliest popes. And this, of course, forms another important piece of that mosaic, that tile puzzle that's now coming into focus.
Perhaps this explains why the fish and anchor, a symbol used by the Flavians, was also the symbol used by Christians for the first 3 centuries.
And artifacts found from the first 3 centuries throughout the Roman Empire would show the dolphin and anchor and trident symbols so frequently. And today it is so common a reference to Christianity that archaeologists use those symbols to identify them as Christian.
Christian tradition has misled us about the nature of the catacombs. Under the illusion that Christians were being systematically persecuted by the Roman Empire, they're often thought of as places where Christians could secretly go and engage in their forbidden rituals. But modern archaeology has come to the firm conclusion that they were in fact burial places with Christian symbols openly displayed on them with access to the public, so that they weren't in fact secrets at all, nor were they places of hiding.
The cross that we now associate with Christianity was almost never used in the first 3 centuries.
In terms of relative numbers, we have at least 70 examples of the anchor and fish image in just one of the catacombs of St. Priscilla, whereas we have fewer than a dozen examples in all of the catacombs of a cross symbol during the whole first 4 centuries.
Catholic scholars explain the absence of the cross as a function of their persecution by the Romans. The fact that they used instead, and far more often, anchor and fish symbols is said to be a disguise of their Christian nature. But as we now know, the Christians were not hiding the fact that they were Christians at this time. It's simply that the anchor and fish were the common original symbols of Christianity that were used for the first 2 to 3 centuries.
And it would take the exact same inside knowledge by a pagan to know whether a cross or an anchor is a Christian symbol or not.
Especially since the cross was used far more seldom, it would be far more common for people to associate the fish and anchor symbol with Christianity than that it would be the cross. So it's hardly a disguise.
And of course, before Christians started using these symbols, they were used by the Flavians and their court.
During the age of the Flavians, we find cameos for the wealthy of the dolphin and anchor symbol. We find other intaglios, for instance, that were used to stamp, wax, and seal documents that were also bore the Flavian symbol of the dolphin and anchor.
The fact that they were on seals or intaglio indicate that they might have been used by very wealthy and perhaps politically connected Romans, people perhaps officials in the Roman state who were using them for official purposes in the late 1st century.
And different variations of the fish and anchor symbol were also used by early Christians.
using a dolphin and anchor symbolism ties into themes we see in the New Testament itself. Jesus says, "I will make you fishers of men." And the anchor is like a hook that a fisherman might use. And the fish, of course, wrapped around the hook is like the bait. And this symbol seems to point to the act of evangelism far more vividly than the symbol of the cross itself.
The fish wrapped around an anchor might be seen as a symbol of Jesus, whereas fish approaching the anchor would be seen as the converts, the fish whom the hook is catching, if you will.
And of course, in the Flavian era, that dolphin was symbolic of Titus himself on his own coins.
Another discovery that we were truly astonished to make was that the earliest Christian symbols frequently used a family of other symbols that could only be seen as pagan symbols, such as the trident with fish, which were associated with no less than the Colosseum in Rome, the Flavian amphitheater. And you can see fish with a trident in the architectural detail of the Colosseum itself, which the Flavians built. And those symbols as well were adopted in the 2nd century by early Christians.
And it's amazing that you would see such symbols in both the Colosseum and in the Christian catacombs only a few miles away. Dolphin and anchor pendants are still sold today. You can find them in Catholic stores and are used to symbolize Christianity. There are also symbols of Christ on an anchor. So these symbols have survived and are completely related to Christianity, and their Flavian connection has been forgotten.
Anchor symbol can be seen all over Christian churches, all over Europe. The dolphin wrapped around an anchor was used as an image by Titus himself in his deification associated with his divinity, and it was the earliest symbol used by Christians to represent Jesus on the cross.
It's interesting that the dolphin wrapped around an anchor could represent both Titus Flavius and Jesus in the same era. One of the most impressive uses of the fish or converts swimming towards the anchor, which represented the hope or salvation offered by the Flavian emperors, was found by Warren and James in a dramatic floor mosaic that was displayed in Herculaneum.
The most irresistible archaeological sites for finding connections between the Flavians and the Christians would be Pompeii and Herculaneum, which were buried by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, exactly 2 months after Titus became the emperor of Rome. Herculaneum and Pompeii are time capsules that perfectly capture what was going on during the Flavian era. This is where we discovered the bottom of a pool that depicts an anchor surrounded by 2 dolphins and 2 people swimming towards the anchor. The symbols that so perfectly match symbols we would see in catacombs for the next 3 centuries are here.
This connection between fish as a symbol and humans being the fish, if you will, being caught, is distinct to the Gospels. The missionary work of Christians is being declared by Jesus himself to be a form of fishing. Of course, anchors are a symbol of safety, a symbol of security. And so people being compared to fish, seeking religious salvation of the anchor, would be very commonly understood in that context as a Christian symbol. But that Christian symbol came at or after this moment when, in a purely pagan context, the Flavian emperors themselves are using the anchor, fish compared to people, as a religious symbol.
This discovery is so important because what it does is establish beyond any doubt that these symbols predate all uses by the Christians in their catacombs by decades. Like a legend of all the symbols we have been discussing, this site ties in the coins with the catacombs, with the other Flavian architectural details that we have seen, all in one original archaeological site. For all practical purposes, it might as well have been a symbol in a Christian catacomb. They're that identical.
It's hard to know if that mosaic at the bottom of that pool is a symbol of Titus, a symbol of Apollo, a symbol of Serapis, or a Christian symbol.
Or perhaps a symbol that started as a pagan symbol and slowly evolved through different variations into finally becoming a Christian symbol.